Here's Brodie Brazil.
Starting it off, what is your relation to the A's? Like, how did you sort of get into being an A's fan and now sort of like working with them, affiliated with them?
I believe the first game I ever attended, any baseball game, was in 1982. A's and the California Angels, they were back then, because I think somebody along the way, my dad or my mom, saved the ticket stub. So I would have been 1 year old when that happened. But I was born and bred an A's fan, and it obviously timed out with, World Series appearance in 88, victory in 89, and another one in 1990, the heyday of McGuire and Canseco and Stu and Eck and Ricky and Carney and all that stuff. So my impressionable years of life were spent going to a lot of A's games. So that's where it started. Over the years through middle school and high school, got into media production, combined that with a passion for sports, began my TV career literally as soon as I started college. This TV station I was working for, KICU in San Jose, we had at that time the contracts for the A's, Sharks, and Warriors. And by the time I got into TV and was actually on TV, there was an opportunity, I think it was 2005. We started doing pregame shows for the A's on our channel. And so that was it. I started working with them directly 05, 06, 07. Unfortunately, got laid off entirely out of television by Channel 36 at the end of 2007. So 08, I'm entirely out of TV. 2009, I start my new job, which I'm still working at here at NBC Sports. It was Comcast Sportsnet back then. And they just knew my history. One of the things they knew is that I'd done some work with the A's before, had roots there, had some connections there. So they put me kind of on that assignment from the very beginning. So, it hasn't been one consistent connection, so to speak. There was a little bit of a break there, but I started relatively early. And, from a fan to somebody who works with them, I don't work for the A's, I work for the network. Some people have that confused, and I get it sometimes. It's deceiving a little bit, but I work for the network that is partners with the A's.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so in your own words, sort of generally, what do you think the A's mean to the city of Oakland as a whole?
50 plus years of existence, and they're not the only team in this area, right? Obviously, the Giants were here first. So it means something to the East Bay, and there are certainly enough fans in this market for two teams, to support two teams. We've seen it. Now, do we always see it? No, but we know that it is possible, and so there's no question whether it should continue. And I think that's what makes the A's special. The East Bay is its own region. I mean, really, with San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, you have three major cities that are all combined into this one Bay Area. So I think it gives Oakland its unique identity. It gives the East Bay its unique identity. And I also think, too, let's just look at the last even 10 years. Like, the A's have had equal amount of success. Now, the Giants did win 3 World Series in 5 years at the beginning of last decade. But again, if you just look at overall the years, A's have won actually more World Series here. They've had just as many playoff teams, a lot more actually, playoff seasons. So since the 2000s. They've had their own success, I guess is the point here. So they're not always the team that never wins or is never good. They've created a proudful identity because of what they do and because of, their tie geographically to part of our region.
Definitely. Yeah, so obviously I sort of mentioned earlier, like the outsider view of A's fans and the Coliseum is obviously a lot different than reality sometimes. There's a lot of misinformation about it, and the media tends to sometimes be hard on the A's and Oakland. How do you think that media view is different than reality?
Well, I think we should all probably be real with ourselves that the Coliseum was originally meant for football, and they catered to playing baseball there. Like, they made it baseball capable. But then in 95, when the Raiders moved back, they made it more of a football multi-purpose complex than anything else. It's never been just a baseball stadium, but right now it is. But it also it missed the decades of the 80s and 90s where when it was 20 and 30 years old, it never got improvements. And so then that put that complex behind the curve in the 2000s, the 2010s, and here in the 20s, it is beyond fixing up. I keep hearing that. Well, fix it up or tear down Mount Davis. Well, that doesn't accomplish your goal here. That's putting a lot of effort and getting not the result that you want out of it. So in terms of the criticism, I think even the most down-to-earth A's fans understand that, yeah, the Coliseum should face criticism. It is beyond its service life, and that's why the A's are desperate to figure out what's next. Hopefully, it's Howard Terminal. But I think, to your point, it gets magnified when there were some incidents that caught national attention, whether it was a sewage issue or, whatever, the cats, whatever. But I think that it gets exaggerated because people who already have it in for the A's for whatever reason, they use that as a chance to really pile on. So to your point, yes, there is some exaggeration there, but also I think deeper down, we all realize that, this stadium has existed longer than it probably should have.
Definitely. And on sort of a follow-up to that question, how do you think the media view of A's fans, or I guess lack thereof of attendance sort of, is different than reality?
Different than reality. I mean, the numbers are what they are. And right now, certainly I don't think, that's at least something that's black and white. Or if you go to a game, you can see what it is. So I don't think anybody is, you're not able to magnify it. You're not able to really make it a bigger deal than it is. But I think, look, this is the franchise that a Hollywood movie was made about. This is a franchise that, you hear other teams and players come in that have played a playoff game against the A's at the Coliseum, and they can't stop talking about how loud and just intimidating the atmosphere was. So I guess what I'll say about that is some people know, like they understand what it's capable of, right? And so long as you know that, this is not a building that's always been vacant. This is not a fan base that's always, had lower numbers. They have set a bar. We know what they're capable of, but obviously that kind of also right now, shows you the discrepancy of attendance that are not getting right now. So, and that's probably why it stands out, right? If the A's were always low, that might be no cause for concern or alarm, but now they are low. And so I think that's why it gets pointed out.
Definitely. So I guess from a fan standpoint, I guess you work, with the A's. So I guess this one sort of can be interpreted differently. Mm-hmm. But would you still, as a fan, like, what would your connection be, your personal connection to be if the A's were to move, like, to the A's? Like, how would you kind of view yourself as a fan at that point?
I'd be sad. I honestly, Casey, I try not to let my brain go there, and I realize it's on the table right now. I fully realize it. I have to view it two ways, personally and professionally. Professionally, it might be out of my control. I don't know. If you're not here, what the working relationship I've had, I don't know. Like, I can't speak to it. I don't even know if that'll be an opportunity or not, or if it means that for our company, I don't want to speak out of turn. So I don't know what that brings, and I'm also not at that pay scale of understanding. There are far more important people to settle that stuff out. So I'll establish that the professional side, and I'll let you know it's out there, and I don't know. Obviously, it's very important to me. Like, I love what I do, and I love the role specifically to the A's. So I don't have much control over it. The personal side, I have also little control, right? Because what can I do besides share my feelings? But I would be tremendously sad. And on a multitude of levels, as I told you before, it's where, my parents brought me going to A's games before I could walk or talk. It's where I learned the game of baseball, that stadium. And I don't mean just that stadium, the East Bay, the city of Oakland. Like, I'll feel just fine if we're going to games at Howard Terminal. Like, I'm not sentimental to the Coliseum. I'm sentimental to the A's in Oakland. And I think now, as a dad of a young child, I want him and us and my family to have that opportunity to eventually take him to a new ballpark and let that legacy continue. So, personally, it's sentimental. It really is that if this goes away, I realize that part of my history is gone and can't be ever replicated again. So, I feel very personally tied to this. And I think, you mentioned before, some people like to cover this information a little bit more frequently, like to put it out there, like to keep people updated. That's why I do it. It's the least I could do to help this conversation happen, to help educate and inform people, but to also keep them updated, because this this ballpark process, this new home process, it's difficult and it's detailed, right? There's just a lot going on.
Yeah, for sure. In your opinion, how would the construction of Howard Terminal kind of take Oakland baseball to the next level and really cultivate it in the city?
As I said before, like the team has always had its identity. They're scrappy, they're fighters. And you know what? This has been a team that has gone through so many iterations of young players. And, you know, that's a separate topic. Like they've recycled a few times, but the one commonality is like they're successful. Like, and they go through some rough years, like maybe we're starting to see for the next few, but you watch, they will reemerge again. So let me make sure that's understood. But the one thing they've never had to go with successful teams is like the real true environment. And by that, like I told you before, yeah, when there's a playoff game and the Coliseum is packed, there's nothing like it. But what about the other 81 regular season games every season and the environment before and after games and the camaraderie among the fan base and the true experience? Yeah, tailgating is great. Don't get me wrong. But at the same respect, to get something that so many other major league teams have in terms of their before, during, and after game experience, if you get all that to go along with the product that usually is on the field, the winning team, that's what A's fans haven't had really ever in their existence in Oakland because they've only played here. And even when the Coliseum was new, well, first off, I can't speak to experience, but I don't think it was like the world-class, gotta go see it type place. So I think that's what Howard Terminal would bring, kind of that missing component of the experience. Let me also say that I think Howard Terminal would bring in the casual fan like never seen before in Oakland. You know, it took them having to be in World Series 3 straight years to get those casual fans out in 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. And, you know, Mark McGuire was still there, Jose was still there, but that's what it took to draw casual fans. Howard Terminal in itself is a draw to people who are like, oh, well, I do like baseball, and I kind of like the A's, but I really want to see what everybody's talking about here in this new ballpark experience. It's really cool, I heard. I got to go. So that's something that they've never had.
Definitely. So why do you think the A's, and you touched on, you know, the kind of how Howard Terminal would sort of bring in the casual fans because, you know, it's Howard Terminal. It's going to be on the wall and everything. But why do you think the A's, I guess, you know, over the past like decade or so, there's been multiple different sites. There's been Peralta, there's been the Coliseum, there's been plenty of different things. But why do you think sort of they've been so persistent in building on the water opposed to the Coliseum site?
You're asking why have the A's at some point turned away from the Coliseum site?
Yeah.
So I think the Alameda County Superior Court Judge Brad Seligman in his recent I guess it was ultimate statement about the EIR and the Coliseum alternative. To your point, why not build something new at the Coliseum? He said it more perfect than I could, or I've heard anybody else say it. And it was to the extent that this site has already proven that nothing else around it is going to be developed. It's not the starter that is going to grow a neighborhood, a new region. And that would be the case, right? With just north of Jack London Square and Howard Terminal and how it connects to downtown. You can see similar to what has happened at Pac Bell / SBC / AT&T / Oracle Park. Like you've seen how South Market area has just exploded in a positive way, and it has revitalized that area and the city of San Francisco. They don't see that as being possible at the Coliseum. Now, let's just turn to the A's perspective. I mean, as I mentioned before, you need something comparable to what the competition has in this market. And not to make this an A's Giants thing, it's not about that. But if you are the casual fan right now, and I entice you with a photo of what it's like to go to a Giants game and just the photo of the Coliseum, more people probably going to say, I would like to, see the sights, walk around the Embarcadero, da-da-da. And so the A's need something comparable to that. Not to mention, they're also trying to start a new chapter of, their history, their legacy. And I'll be honest, I think the opportunity to do two things here, to develop 3,000 new housing units at Howard Terminal, but also to unlock the Coliseum site. Like that is still such a valuable piece of land. When you say, why wouldn't the A's consider building there? Like that is where it's at, right next to the freeway, BART station. I agree. Those are all things that are great for a new community of residential, commercial, potentially educational. Like there's a lot of opportunity. I don't think they're going to tear down the arena because it's new enough to keep. Anyway, long story short, there's so much opportunity for a lot of other things besides a complex that's only going to get used 81 times a year. You could use that place 365 days a year. So it is valuable, in my opinion, and in the A's opinion, just not for the baseball site. And again, you open Howard Terminal, you get that, you get all the perks of that, and then you get the Coliseum site unlocked to do something else. So I think it's a multitude of things. Really hard to narrow down that one reason, but there's so many reasons that, and I fully agree, it's got to be Howard Terminal for your next site. Otherwise, yeah, you rebuild at the Coliseum, you're going to have to lift that whole site up 4 to 6 feet for sea level mitigation. You can't build underground like you previously did. The Coliseum playing surface is 22 feet below sea level right now. So it has to totally be reimagined. And guess what? We would be having the conversation 20 years from now. Well, are the A's going to move because they built a crummy stadium that just didn't work? It was a temporary fix, and here we are again. They want to solve the problem for good.
100%. Yeah. So obviously about over a year ago, Rob Manfred kind of came out and said that, MLB is going to give the A's permission to seek alternative sites as the progress with the new ballpark isn't being fast enough. And then, of course, Cavill sent sort of a letter to fans. And, it scared a lot of A's fans, including myself, that they were seeking alternatives to Oakland. What was your reaction when, I think it was May of 2021 that this all kind of came out?
Yeah, it hit like a ton of bricks, right? Because all of a sudden, the talks of Charlotte and Portland and Montreal and in Las Vegas, they weren't real, right? The A's won't address it. It'll be talked about, but it's not real. Okay, well, guess what? Now the A's are talking about it. So I think it was a big warning shot to everybody. And all of a sudden it got really personal. And Las Vegas gets personal because, well, Oakland's just lost a team to Las Vegas. You also understand that of all the other cities, Las Vegas seems, and it just seems, like I don't know this for sure, but seems the most opportunistic to making a deal with you, whereas maybe it's a little bit tougher in a Portland or a Charlotte. I don't know. I'm just guessing because they've been flexible before. So I think it got very real and very intimidating. And I'll just say this as my only other, part of it. It is what caught the attention of Oakland all of a sudden in retrospect. And I realize that it continues to not be favorable as a discussion point. But at some point, more than a year ago, it's what all of a sudden had the city council taking a vote on July 20th, whether or not to go forward with a term sheet. Turned out to be their own term sheet, which wasn't perfect, but you understand my point. It did kick things into motion. So as much as I get it, Las Vegas is a sore subject, it's also what has, I think, hit the accelerator just a little bit for the city of Oakland to make the government side of it actually process things at a reasonable rate. Yep,
definitely. So yeah, taking you back even further, about a decade ago, what was your reaction when the A's were in talks to moving to San Jose? And then the Fremont idea, of course, but mainly San Jose.
Yeah, I always thought Fremont was never a great idea because, again, it just goes to potential. And there was land out there. Well, why did they want to do Cisco Field in Fremont or was it Milpitas or whatever? Oh, because there's land out there. Well, yeah, but like land, just open land. I mean, then go move out to Tracy or go to Stockton, whatever. Like it has to be good land. It has to be an opportunistic move for you. So when that came out, I was always like, okay, if you do that, great, but I'm not sure if that's going to solve your issue here. San Jose was a different one because it was going to be in a proximity to downtown, a proximity to the tank, a proximity to the Diridon train complex, which is now adding a BART station, kind of where the ballpark was going to be. And not to mention, I spent a large chunk of my life going to college in San Jose. I've worked also with the Sharks all these years. I know what San Jose is capable of. So I was kind of caught in between here. Like I'm from the East Bay, born and bred in Alameda County. And at one point I was, that saying set love free. Well, and I'm saying this now, but because I don't feel this way anymore. And it's also not a possibility. It would not have hurt my feelings to a large degree if the A's had moved to San Jose back then. I want to make clear, this is not me saying this in 2022. This is me, around 2007, 8, or 9, or when that really got hot. This is me saying back then, I would not have been like thrilled about it, but I would have understood and I would have said, okay, this is and I'm still a driving distance away, can still work and go to games. And so it would have been reasonable enough. I think a baseball team in that market would have thrived greatly already. So I was never like pumped about it. I realized it probably was going to work really well. It would have torn me a little bit, but it would have also secured the team in our area for years to come, and we wouldn't be having this conversation that we are right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so obviously the A's year in and year out have this small payroll, for players compared to other teams that are winning World Series and having a lot of success. And obviously the A's, despite that small payroll, due to the intelligence in the front office, they've still been able to win divisions, make the playoffs and develop talent from the minor leagues. How do you think building at Howard Terminal would allow them to, or I guess, do you think Howard Terminal would allow them to retain top talent and then also sign top free agents as well?
It should. And I mean, I think that's one of those things and it's been said that they will. So I think you have only one thing that you can do. Wait, let's see, and then show me. It makes sense why it would work out that way, because you're obviously in a different financial situation all of a sudden. And I think you can kind of even see it right now. Why did the team choose to hit the restart button here in 2022? Is it because that's a 3-year process and building a stadium might be a 4-year process, a 4 or 5-year process at this point? So are you already retooling for going into a new home, with a strong footing? Hard to know because nothing is firm on a timeline. But yeah, it's hard to sync everything up. It's really hard to get everything on the same page and on the same track. And I got away from your question. Remind me, what was the question on this one again?
Yeah, I kind of asked, do you think Howard Terminal would allow the A's?
That's right.
Yeah.
Like I said, it should. I don't know for sure that we'll have any indication that it will until we're actually there. So I see all the reasons it could and should, and that's the hope, right? Is that, you get a name like you're wearing Oakland on your chest. You don't want that to change. And I know you have a Stu jersey on, so he's not going anywhere. But I know if that said Langoliers on the back, I know you don't want that to change. So you want to know that you can buy that jersey, and this isn't going to change, and that isn't going to change. And hopefully Howard Terminal is part of that.
Yeah, for sure. What is one feature of Howard Terminal that you wish to be implemented, whether it be a statue or a relic of some kind?
The Brodie Brazil reserved parking space is what I, having walked the site, I think what most people don't ever realize is how big those cranes are. From a distance, right? They look big but when you are standing right underneath them, and I've walked the grounds, I mean, I'm the exact ones that would be there, they are magnificent. They're probably in need of just a quick paint job and a touch up and, refreshing. And I know they'll do that because they're not going to be used anymore. But what I feel like is most not understood yet, not realized yet about this project and the site is just its location. I mean, when you get on that waterfront, because who is ever beyond Jack London Square, which is visited, but not to the degree utilized that it could be, when you spend any time down there, going to Scott's Seafood, popular restaurant down there. I used to work at Channel 2, which is just a little bit further down the estuary. And you realize what a beautiful untapped area that is. And you realize a ballpark's going to be here with these cool cranes, with kind of the environment surrounding it. That's the part that I can already see, just by being there, that most people don't understand yet.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess another question I have is sort of with, Libby Schaaf's term ending very, very soon.
Yeah.
And the A's are sort of in Oakland are sort of trying to get an agreement done as soon as possible. Are you confident that we can get a decision, or I guess a binding vote pretty soon? Or
well, they have to have an agreement first that they can take a vote on, and we don't have the agreement yet. Now, time is literally days away from running out from what we initially thought might be happening the 20th of September. They're supposed to go over this and analyze the financials, and they're not ready apparently to do that. there still are several months left in this calendar year, which you realize. And, obviously the mayor, a couple city council members, they're all being replaced just because of the election cycle. They've served their terms. Mayor, obviously, the city council members, we don't know the number yet of who will be replaced. The biggest problem here is not that somebody else may not come in and immediately support the project, but somebody might come in who's not up to speed on the project, and they haven't been privy to where this has been. And all of a sudden they come in, and catching up to the game slows everything down, and then maybe they're not favorable. I mean, we're assuming they might be. What if they're not? Who gets elected here and their position on Howard Terminal and their intent on Howard Terminal, those are very important things for the city of Oakland to be voting on coming up in November, if we're not at that point yet. So we are getting in just a uncomfortable time period where, yes, something is running out. I don't know that it would entirely derail this, but it would make it a lot more difficult than it needs to be.
Definitely. That's actually all the questions I have. I really appreciate your help. And
if anybody's been with the video this long, let's just say it again. So you're doing this for your school project, which, by the way, you got to get an A on now. Come on, right? Like, not because of me, because our chat was so good. Yeah. But you're doing this for your school project. I wanted to put this. I said, hey, if we're going to record this, I'll put it on my channel because I knew you would ask good questions. Let me just leave everybody with this. So give us your age right now and what you're doing on your channel and what you ultimately hope to someday do.
Yeah, so I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior in high school. And right now I have a channel called A's Raiders Dub Sharks. I make daily recap videos of all the games for those four respective teams and also the Roots and the Quakes. And I also do analysis videos. I talk about Howard Terminal. I vlog the games I go to. I do a lot of different things. And my goal is sort of to build a community with, people that are like-minded. And my goal long-term is to honestly kind of do what you're doing, Brodie. Be talking in front of a big audience about the thing I love, which is sports and analysis. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to go to college next year. And so that's sort of on my track forward.
Great. Hey, as I told you before, you're an up-and-comer. Don't worry about the metrics. Don't worry about the views. Don't worry about the subscribers. Do your quality work. Do your thing. Get your reps in, and that's what's going to pay off for you. And I'm glad you're doing it here on YouTube. So, Casey, thank you for having me actually do this. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you too. I mean, I thought it was great, and I really appreciate you to do this.